Hi, Aqua Roomers. Time for chapter reading. Yesterday, we left off with Laura and Mary and Ma and Pa went into town and they're at the store. And if you remember, Laura has never seen a store before. She and Mary have never even been to town. So there they are. Look at all of those things. The store was full of things to look at. All along one side of it were shelves full of colored prints and calicos. There were beautiful pink and blues and reds and browns and purples. On the floor, standing along the sides of the plank counters, were kegs of nails and round gray shot, and there were big wooden pails full of candy. There were sacks of salt and sacks of store sugar. In the middle of the store was a plow made of shiny wood with a glittering bright plowshare, and there were steel axe heads and hammerheads, saws, all kinds of knives, hunting knives, skinning knives, butcher knives, and jackknives. There were big boots and little boots, big shoes and little shoes. Laura could have looked for weeks and not seen all the things that were in that store. She had not known there were so many things in the whole world. Pa and Ma traded for a long time. The storekeeper took down bolts and bolts of beautiful calicos and spread them out for Ma to finger and look at and price. Laura and Mary looked, but they must not touch. Every new color and pattern was prettier than the last, and there were so many of them. Laura did not know how Ma could ever choose. Then Ma decided on 2 patterns of calico to make shirts for Pa, a piece of brown denim to make him a jumper. She got some white cloth to make sheets and underwear. Pa got enough calico to make Ma a new apron. Ma said, "Oh no, Charles, I don't really need it." But Pa laughed and said she must pick it out or he'd get her the turkey red piece with the big yellow pattern. Ma smiled and flushed pink, and she picked out a pattern of rosebuds and leaves on a soft fawn-colored ground. Then Pa got for himself a pair of galluses. Look at what Pa is holding. Those are galluses. Galluses are suspenders. So instead of wearing a belt to hold up your pants, Pa would wear the galluses, and they hook onto the front, go over your shoulder, hook onto the back, one on either side. There we go. And he also got some tobacco to smoke in his pipe. Ma got a pound of tea and a little paper sack of store sugar to have in the house when company came. It was a pale brown sugar, not dark brown like the maple sugar that Ma used for every day. When all of the trading was done, the storekeeper gave Mary and Laura each a piece of candy. They were so astonished and so pleased, they just stood looking at their candies. Then Mary remembered and said, "Thank you." Laura could not speak. Everybody was waiting, but she could not make a sound. Ma had to ask her, "What do you say, Laura?" Then Laura opened her mouth and gulped and whispered, "Thank you." After that, they went out of the store. Both pieces of candy were white, and the flat and thin, and they were heart-shaped. There was printing on them in red letters. Ma read it for them. Mary said, "Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you." Laura's only said, "Sweets to the sweet." The pieces of candy were exactly the same size. Laura's printing was larger than Mary's. They all went back through the sand to the wagon on the lake shore. Pa fed the horses on the bottom of the wagon box. He fed them oats that he brought for their dinner. Ma opened the picnic box. They all sat in the warm sand near the wagon and ate bread and butter and cheese, hard-boiled eggs and cookies. The waves of Lake Pepin curled up on the shore at their feet and slid back with the smallest hissing sound. After dinner, Pa went back to the store to talk a while with the other men. Ma sat holding Carrie quietly until she went to sleep, but Laura and Mary ran along the lake shore, picking up pretty pebbles that they had rolled back, that the ocean had rolled back and forth by the waves until they were polished smooth. And that's what the lake did. There were no pebbles like that in the big woods. When she found a pretty one, Laura put it in her pocket, and there were so many, each prettier than the last, that she filled her pocket full. Then Pa called, and they ran back to the wagon, for the horses were hitched up, and it was time to go home. Laura was so happy, she ran through the sand to Pa with all those beautiful pebbles in her pocket. But when Pa picked her up and tossed her into the wagon, a dreadful thing happened. The heavy pebbles tore her pocket right out of her dress. The pocket fell, and the pebbles rolled all over the bottom of the wagon box. Laura cried because she had torn her best dress. Oh, look. She's really very sad. My goodness. See all the pebbles? And can you see the tear in her dress? And that's her pocket. It's right there. Okay. Stop crying, Laura, said Ma. She gave Carrie to Pa and came quickly to look at the torn piece, and she said it was all right. I can fix it. She showed Laura that the dress was not torn at all, nor the pocket. The pocket was a little bag sewed into the seam of the dress skirt, not hanging under it. Only the seams had ripped. Ma could sew the pocket again, as good as new. Pick up the pretty pebbles, Laura, Ma said. Ooh, and another time, don't be so greedy. And greedy means you keep wanting more and more and more, even when you have enough. So Laura gathered up the pebbles, put them in the pocket, and carried the pocket in her lap. She did not mind very much when Pa laughed at her for being such a greedy little girl that she took more than she could carry away. Nothing like that ever happened to Mary. Mary was a good little girl who always kept her dress clean and neat and minded her manners. Mary had lovely golden curls, and her candy heart had a poem on it. Mary looked very good and sweet, unrumpled and clean, sitting on the board beside Laura. And Laura did not think that was fair. But it had been a wonderful day, the most wonderful day in her whole life. She thought about the beautiful blue lake and the town she had seen and the big store full of so many things. She held the pebbles carefully in her lap and her candy heart wrapped carefully in her handkerchief until she got home and could put it away to keep always. It was too pretty to eat. The wagon jolted along the homeward road through the big woods. The sun set and the woods grew darker, but before the last of the twilight was gone, the moon rose, and they were safe because Pa had his gun. The soft moonlight came down through the treetops and made patches of light and shade on the road ahead. The horses' hooves made a cheerful clippity-clop, clippity-clop. Laura and Mary did not say anything because they were very tired, and Ma sat silently holding baby Carrie sleeping in her arms. But Pa sang softly, 'Mid pleasures and palaces, though we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. Ooh, new chapter. Summertime. Now it was summertime, and people went visiting. Sometimes Uncle Henry or Uncle George or Grandpa came riding out of the big woods to see Pa. Ma would come to the door and ask how all the folks were, and she would say, "Charles is in the clearing." Then she would cook more dinner than usual, and dinner time would be longer. Pa and Ma and the visitor would sit, talking a while, before they went back to their work. Sometimes Ma let Laura and Mary go across the road and down the hill to see Mrs. Peterson. The Petersons had just moved in. Their house was new and always very neat because Mrs. Peterson had no little girls to muss it up. She was a Swede, and that means she's from Sweden. And she let Laura and Mary look at all the pretty things that she had brought from Sweden. Laces and colored embroideries in China. Mrs. Peterson talked Swedish to them, and they talked English to her, and they understood each other perfectly. She always gave them each a cookie when they left, and they nibbled the cookies very slowly while they walked home. Laura nibbled away exactly half of hers, and Mary nibbled exactly half of hers, and the other halves they saved for baby Carrie. Then when they got home, Carrie had 2 half cookies, and that was a whole cookie. This wasn't right. All they wanted to do was to divide the cookies fairly with Carrie. Still, if Mary saved half her cookie while Laura ate the whole of hers, or if Laura saved half and Mary ate the whole cookie, well, that wouldn't be fair either. They didn't know what to do, so each saved half and gave it to baby Carrie. But they always felt that somehow that wasn't quite fair. Sometimes a neighbor said word that the family was coming to spend the day. Then Ma did extra cleaning and cooking and opened the package of store sugar. And on the next day, the day that was set, a wagon would come driving up to the gate in the morning, and there would be strange children to play with. When Mr. and Mrs. Hewlett came, they brought Eva and Clarence with them. Eva was a pretty girl with dark eyes and black curls. She played carefully and kept her dress clean and smooth. Mary liked that, but Laura liked better to play with Clarence. Clarence was red-headed and freckled and always laughing. His clothes were pretty too. He wore a blue suit buttoned all the way up the front with bright gilt buttons and trimmed with braid, and he had copper-toed shoes. There's Clarence. Oh, can you see the very tips of his shoes? They're made of copper. My goodness. I think Laura's having fun with Clarence climbing the tree. The strips of copper across the toes were so glittering bright that Laura wished she were a boy. Little girls didn't wear copper toes. Laura and Clarence ran and shouted and climbed trees while Mary and Eva walked nicely together and talked. And tomorrow we'll find out more things that happened on the visit. So I hope you enjoyed today's chapter, boys and girls. Until next time, bye.